Welcome to the 13th episode in our video series. I'm Dr. David Van Nuys, co-author with Michael Kelleher of the book This is the Zodiac Speaking, Into the Mind of a Serial Killer. And by now I'm going to assume you've seen my other 12 previous YouTube installments. This one is a continuation of the analysis of the November 9, 1969 letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, which came a month after the murder of Paul Stein, a part-time cab driver in San Francisco. And that letter was so long that I had to break it in half. So continuing where I left off, Zodiac writes, "Hey, Blue Pig, I was in the park. You were using fire trucks to mask the sound of your cruising prowl cars. The dogs never came within 2 blocks of me, and they were to the west, and there was only 2 groups of parking about 10 minutes apart. Then the motorcycles went by about 150 feet away, going from south to northwest. P.S. 2 cops pulled a goof about 3 minutes after I left the cab. I was walking down the hill to the park when this cop pulled up, and one of them called me over and asked if I saw anyone acting suspicious or strange in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And I said, yes, there was this man who was running by, waving a gun, and the cops peeled rubber and went around the corner as I directed them, and I disappeared into the park, a block and a half away, never to be seen again." So here we see, once again, in this section of the letter, it sounds like a delighted male teenager telling his cronies of his exploits and how he outwitted the dumb cops. Now he goes on to write, "Hey, pig, doesn't it rile you up to have your nose rubbed in your boo-boos? If you cops think I'm going to take out a bus on the way I stated, let me start again. If you cops think I'm going to take out a bus the way I stated I was, you deserve to have holes in your heads." Now he's referring to a previous threat to blow up a bus and a bomb diagram that he had sent. And so now he's really reveling in a sense of superiority over the police. He clearly needs to feel clever and smart and to let other people know it. And so he goes on to write to prove his point. "Take 1 bag of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and 1 gallon of stove oil and dump a few bags of gravel on top, and then set the shit off, and will positively ventilate anything that should be in the way of the blast." Now this was well before the blast in Oklahoma City, and I think it was carried out in about the way that he describes. And one wonders where the writer learned of this formula in 1969. Today, after the Oklahoma City bombing, it has unfortunately become common knowledge. Today's Zodiac could have mined the internet for this information, but how did he come by this information in 1969? Does this indicate some military training? It doesn't seem likely that he would have made it in the military, though. Now he goes on to write, "The death machine is already made. I would have sent you pictures, but you would be nasty enough to trace them back to the developer and then to me." Now, if nothing else, this implies that he lives in a fixed, traceable location and that he's not a drifter. Otherwise, he wouldn't be afraid of being traced. So that's a clue for us. He says, "I shall describe my masterpiece to you. The nice part of it is all the parts can be bought in the open market, with no questions asked. 1 battery-powered clock will run for approximately 1 year, 1 photoelectric switch, 2 copper leaf springs, 2 6-volt car batteries, 1 flashlight bulb and reflector, 1 mirror, 2 18-inch cardboard tubes, black with shoe polish, inside and out." So we have to wonder, is this the Zodiac's own plan, or was this sort of device part of what people could learn about in the anti-war underground movement? I mean, this is before the internet. He couldn't have looked it up there. Did this device appear in books? Did the writer figure it out on his own using his obvious bent for technology? It shows a basic understanding of electronics on the one hand, but it's not terribly sophisticated on the other. And then he goes on, "The system checks out from one end to the other in my tests. What you do not know is whether the death machine is at the site or whether it is being stored in my basement for future use." Now this reference to a basement is very interesting. Oh, if only this had just happened, we might be able to use these clues. One has to wonder if the reference to a basement is metaphorical or real. How many houses in the San Francisco Bay Area have basements? Not that many, I don't think. Not most. If the writer does not actually have a basement now, he might have grown up somewhere where he did. He goes on to write, I think you do not have the manpower to stop this one by continually searching the roadsides and looking for this thing, and it won't do to reroute and reschedule the buses because the bomb can be adapted to new conditions. Have fun. By the way, it could be rather messy if you try to bluff me. And then he says, P.S. Be sure to print the part I marked out on about being stopped by the police, or I shall do my thing. In a previous letter, you might recall, he threatened to do his thing, which was kind of an expression back in the 60s. In other words, he's saying, be sure to let him tweak the nose of the police in public. He really wants to be able to humiliate them, that's clear. He goes on to write, to prove that I am the Zodiac, ask the Vallejo cop about my electric gun sight, which I used to start my collecting of slaves. And here Zodiac tells us that he's started his collection of slaves with the Vallejo murders of December 1968. If we believe him, then we must also believe that he did not commit the Bates murder in Riverside, which many people have attributed to Zodiac, and which I haven't covered in our discussion here. And the other thing that I would point out here is he makes reference to, he says, ask the Vallejo cop about my electric gun sight, which I used to start my collecting of slaves. And you'll recall the clever device of that he taped a pen light to the barrel of a gun in the first shooting, in essence creating a primitive early version of a laser sight. So again, showing that sort of technical flair that he has. So here, by breaking it up into two parts, we've gotten through this letter. And I think maybe in the next episode, I'll give you kind of a summary of where I am at this point, the kinds of conclusions I had come to at this point in the saga. So I urge you to watch for subsequent episodes in which I'll continue to move through this material. And once again, if you're interested in psychology, please check out my podcast series, Shrink Rap Radio, at www.shrinkrapradio.com. And until next time.